I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
The subject of this week's show comes courtesy of this brilliant, and I do mean brilliant, Black woman psychologist and educator that I follow on Instagram. Her name is Dr. Raquel Martin, and her handle on Instagram, and I encourage everyone to follow her, is Raquel Martin, PhD, all all lowercase. She's also got other pages, and you can find her by going to her site. But she posts many things about therapy and Black family. But one thing struck me a few weeks ago when she talked about how your children shouldn't be afraid of you. And I said, that's the thing that we as Black parents really need to talk about, because many of us grew up with whoopings and beatings, and our parents really calling corporal punishment discipline, but also that meant we were afraid of them. We weren't just afraid if we made a mistake and they found out. And that was one of the things that Dr. Martin expressed in her post. And she was saying, well, if you're afraid, and I don't mean to misquote her, I did message her and tell her I was going to be giving her a shout out. But she was saying that your child can't come to you if they're in trouble, if they've made a mistake, if they're being molested. And I thought about that because children also who are being groomed and later molested, they're also made to feel as if it's a secret and it's their fault. And if they're afraid to tell their parents that someone has harmed them, or maybe they made a mistake, or maybe they got into an accident with the car and scraped the car, or whatever it is, if your children are afraid of you, you can't help them sometimes when they need help the most. And the problem is, in our community, a lot of times we equate fear with respect. And so we want our children to be a little bit afraid of us. And before my sisters weigh in, I want to say that I talked to my daughter about this. Now she's 24. And I asked her, were you afraid of me? And she said, well, I was more afraid of disappointing you. She says, because anger, you'll get over that, but disappointment lasts longer. So if your kids don't want to disappoint you, that might be a good thing. But if they're afraid to tell you if they're in trouble, maybe that's not so good. So, sisters, what do you think about fear in our children?
I was thinking a lot about that question. And I really like what you said, Cheryl, about having that kind of trust between a parent and a child where they will not be scared to come and tell you something that is going to help them in the long run, because you've built that kind of relationship with them where they are not afraid of you. I'm looking back at my own childhood, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I was scared of mama, because if I did something wrong, I knew I was going to get it.
Yep.
And and mama was little, but she was mighty. I would describe her to other people, and then when they met her, they're thinking our little tiny mama should be at least 6'10", and then she's this little teeny little thing, and I'm saying, well, she was big to us. But I was thinking that sometimes we confuse fear with respect, like you said, and so we feel like we have to have our kids respect us, so they better be scared, or I'm going to know why. And I think I was thinking back at the first perfect parent of the universe, who was God. And when Adam and Eve, who walked with God closely, have that kind of relationship that we all want, when they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and knew that they had done wrong, they were afraid of God. They ran and they hid. Now, God was disappointed in them, I guess, but because the relationship was broken, they became afraid, as do we all. We have these weird concepts about God, that he's this horrible ogre, when he really loves us and sent his son to die for us so that we could be made back into a right relationship with him. But still, as a parent, there is fear from our kids, because I think we don't have the right balance in what respect looks like and what fear looks like, because we live in a land where there is so much child abuse that, yeah, kids are sometimes afraid of their parents, and for good reason, because they might be the kind of parents that are bullying parents, mean parents, authoritarian parents, the kind of parents that a child is afraid of because they are fearful for their lives. They didn't grow up with good nurturing. Uh, but the scripture says that perfect love casts out all fear, and that we have not been given a spirit of fear or timidness, but of love and a sound mind. So why don't we have that? And I want to bring up this book that I have been reading. Really, I didn't get it for me. I kind of got it and kind of have a hint to my kids. But there were a couple of things in here that kind of pointed out the difference between fear and respect, and how a child responds to it. I'll just read a couple of them. But a healthy parental response: I really get upset when the chores aren't done. I had to hire a neighbor's boy to do your work. It cost $5 and it will be deducted from your allowance. And what the child's perception is: Mom is angry because I didn't do my chores. If I don't do them, I will have to pay the price. She's giving me the choice. Or, you won't be going to scout meeting tonight because you have to stay home and do the chores you didn't do this afternoon. Or a parent can also say, thanks for your hard work. I appreciate it. Having help has made this job a lot easier. Thank you. The kitchen looks great, doesn't it? And the child's perception is, I am important. I belong to this family. I am responsible and I do a good job. How many parents, and I'm asking my sisters to think back, how many parents actually praise their children when they do a good job, as opposed to, this kitchen better be clean because I told you to do it? So, Naima, how do you weigh in on this?
Well, I must say that because we think that God is like our dysfunctional parents who are mean spirited or vengeful, or egotistically thinking, I'm gonna show you I'm boss, all that kind of thing, or extreme and punishment, and just believing that they have to keep us in a state of fear. Because people are believing that, then they abuse their children by being those people who don't praise because they think they got to toughen you up by not babying you. And so parents tend to not be praising, they tend to not be encouraging, they tend to not acknowledge when you do a good job. They only give you attention when something's done wrong. And they only punish. And I've known many parents who think that's good parenting. They got that army discipline, army private kind of parenting where all you do is holler and yell and scream. That's supposed to toughen you up. And they really believe that that's good parenting because that's what they receive, because that's what their parents receive, because that's what their parents receive. So we've been passing on this dysfunctional parenting model for,
Slave mentality.
and
Because
it's not even just Black people with the slave,
yes, that's
because
true.
the Europeans came from a culture where they were abused, and so
Yes,
the
yes.
abuser becomes the abused. The abused becomes the abuser. You're talking about a culture where people were publicly flogged. I mean, where spare the rod,
But
spoil the child, meaning you're supposed to beat your children. I mean, people are believing that that's spirituality, where God is only love, but people want to believe that God is punitive and jealous and angry and vengeful. And so they believe they're being good parents when they behave that way toward their children. So, because we've had so many generations of misunderstanding that has been manifested in the cruelty toward our children under the guise or under the label of discipline, we have so many damaged adults, people who
yeah,
don't trust, who don't have the capacity even to show affection because there was none shown to them because parents thought that's babying them or spoiling them. So we have all of these misguided understandings about what God is and what God's love really is. And we think it's, to be harsh and punitive and unforgiving and all of that
and vengeful.
and vengeful, like God has an ego. God doesn't have an ego.
But
God
but also,
but parents are that way. And as a result, we've created this situation where children don't trust because they do know that if they make a mistake, not only are their parents going to be disappointed, their parents are going to feel like I have to show you that you don't do that. You don't disrespect me like that. That's how they respond, as opposed to, well, let me guide you on how to correct what you've done, and let me help you understand the harm you've done to other people and doing this, so that you can have compassion for people and not be insensitive to how your actions are affecting others. That's how
right,
we need to parent our children, to teach them compassion and to teach them to do things that don't harm people. And then if they
Right.
do harm people, help them correct the damage as opposed to causing them more pain because they didn't know any better. And we can only do that when we correct our thinking. And
that's right.
And
That's
you
how
know,
right.
does that
we have
look
to be able to
even
teach it.
in the classroom? Because I know that there are teachers, you were scared of them
Oh yeah.
because you knew that you were, well, back when we were in school, you did get beat. But there were some
Yeah.
teachers
Beating the
that,
like
oh, Miss Hargrave, you don't play with her. She tells you something and you will do it. Whereas there were some teachers that were so laid back that you could get away with just about
yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
If there was bullying in the class, she didn't correct it. If there was
Mm.
back talking in the class, she didn't correct it. And so some teachers probably feel that they need to make kids afraid of them for them to be obedient in school. And and then maybe that's passed on to parents thinking the same way. But how do you exhort discipline in a child without them having to be fearful of you? How do you show that I love you?
Well,
I'm a parent
I,
and I'm loving you. And this is for your own good. Or maybe they might say this beating is for your own good. I
that's
don't
what
know.
they say. This
Yes,
is gonna
and
hurt
that's
me
what
more
I
than it
say
hurts you.
about the slave mentality of this beating is that we're still thinking that mass is going to sell our children if we don't make them compliant and
Right.
invisible and break their spirits so that they won't get sold. Nobody's selling our children, and we need to stop acting as if they still are. We do need to make children understand consequences. Okay, and I'm taking this from another Instagram person, and I unfortunately I don't know his name, and he's very good talking about parenting. He's a young Black man. If I can find his name next week, I'll put it up there. But he talked about teaching his son about going to the park and not holding his hand. So he tells him, okay, you can't run away, you can't run to the street. You know how 2-year-olds are. So the
Yeah.
first time he did that, he says, "See, I told you not to do that. You have to either hold Daddy's hand or we're
You're
going to
sitting
go
on this
home."
bench.
So what
Mhm.
did he do? He didn't say, okay, the next time that does, he didn't beat him. He just took him home. Says, see, you didn't obey. So now we have to go home. So now his son remembers that, because her children are also smart people. We
Right.
need to remember that they're learning. And the next time his son remembered, in order to get to the park, he had to hold Daddy's hand. Well, that required patience. It required, yes, teaching them
Repeated action,
consequences and repeat
consistency.
and yeah, and consistency. And you have to teach your children that way. But you also have that trust. And it is hard, because especially those of you all who are going into those uh puberty teen years, you're going to get a lot of sneaky stuff going on. You may not find out about it until after they are grown. Uh so
And
but
they confess.
that's a whole nother thing. But the thing is that if they're ever really in trouble, you need to have that kind of trust to say, okay, Mom, Dad, I know you're going to be angry,
But
but and you
can you
have
come
to
bail me
say,
out of jail?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, bring your credit card wherever you're going. But the thing is that you need to tell them, you need to have established these ground rules. If you're in trouble, I might be mad, but I'm gonna still come get you. I'll just
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
mad, but I'm coming, because you can
Yeah.
depend on me. And
Right.
your kids have to remember that they can depend on you. And that's the thing, is that way, if someone is grooming them and then saying, oh, this will be our little secret. One thing, you do not keep secrets with other adults. Do
Right.
not,
And you have to teach that to your
And you
children.
teach that to your children.
you teach that
Yeah.
to your children, so that they get that little, Mom said or Dad said I shouldn't be keeping secrets from them, and
Mm.
not to tell anybody, but so, but they get scared, because they're also being groomed. If you tell, you're going to be in trouble. And
And that,
so
yeah.
that is why we have to establish that trust, so that they can say, well, I'm not supposed to say, so you can tell, I won't be mad at you, and I can help you, because you're supposed to be their safe space. You're
And
Well,
their
this
sanctuary.
well,
this
that's
comes
why.
from the trust that you have built up
Yes.
from the nurturing from the very beginning.
Pick them
Many
up when they're
times,
crying.
yes,
When they're
Yes.
crying,
yeah,
pick them
Yeah.
up. Don't let them
many
cry it
times
out.
Yeah.
parents are not skilled in knowing how to nurture because maybe never they were nurtured.
That's it.
But plenty of parenting groups, plenty of information, plenty of parenting groups. If you're feeling insecure because maybe you aren't comfortable with the way you were raised and you want to do better. And so you need to be willing to reach out to other mom groups, other father groups, other parenting and co parenting groups to learn nurturing skills because you don't want your children to be fearful. Yes, there is that moment of trepidation when your kid has done something wrong and they know they're going to get in trouble. But that's a different kind of fear. That's like
That's the
knowing
fear
that
of
there are
disappointment.
consequences, but the consequences aren't death. You know what I'm
Yes.
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and
Yes.
and that's another thing also. I mean, children don't want to disappoint you, but they should know they can never lose your love.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what we have to reinforce. Yeah, we have high expectations for you. We know that you're capable of great things, and we'll be disappointed if you do less than your best. But we're not going to cause you physical pain or public humiliation if that happens. Yeah, we might, you know, give you some consequences to let you contemplate what you did and the harm you caused, but we're always going to love you. And that's a skill that parents have to be taught, because if you've been raised with beatings, you really don't know how to correct with love because it wasn't demonstrated. And
Oh, And
it's
listen,
hard.
anybody says, "Oh, this hurts me more than it does you,"
It
no,
did.
it
No,
doesn't.
it hurt me more than it hurt you. Don't. No, it didn't.
It
So,
Depending
doesn't.
on what they used.
It doesn't
yeah.
matter. If I'm the one getting beat and you're the one doing the beating, it's hurting me more.
Yeah,
You
If
know,
it hurt you, you
nobody, nobody's in a fight where they get beat up saying, "Oh, I bet you that you really got hurt on your fist."
Yeah,
You know, up against my face. You know,
nah. I
So
showed you.
so let's not, add to the delusion. Yeah,
Yeah.
and your children, when you're angry, and maybe you're yelling at them or whatever, because we all lose control and we all make mistakes, even us three perfect parents. uh
You notice we haven't had any of our children on to talk about our parenting.
yes, exactly. Yo, no, they
Bust us
they
out.
they they don't.
they might accidentally tell the truth.
Exactly. So,
Oh,
so the thing is that you have to let them understand that you can hold both things. Yes, I can be angry and disappointed, and I can still
I
be
guess.
willing to jump in front of a train for you because I love you more than anything in this universe.
Yeah.
And they have to always know that, so
They do
that
have
they
to
know,
know.
like Sarah tells, yeah, but if you're angry, that's going to go away. If you're disappointing, you know, someone, that means, you kind of have to rebuild that feeling,
That esteem, because
that,
you
that esteem that
Yeah.
now
you
they think.
had,
Yeah.
like if you didn't do your best, or you cheated. Say you cheated on a test. That would be, to me, that
Yeah.
would be terrible. I mean, I'd rather you
Yeah.
fail a test because you didn't study than to cheat on it.
Right.
And that's what
That's
parents
your
need to know,
integrity.
because when you're cheating yourself because you're not learning. It's about learning. And if you missed out on something and you cheated, I'm going and you get caught, I'm going to be really, really disappointed in you because
Because you
you
didn't understand the
you
point.
didn't understand that the point isn't to get an A. The point is to learn the lesson.
Exactly.
But that
And
that has to be emphasized even in the classroom. And one of the problems that we create with our model of learning and the whole competition thing, you treat the children who get the A's better than you treat the children who get the D's. Then for children, oh, it's about getting an A so that I'll be treated well, as opposed
Yeah.
to teachers saying, okay, I need to know who it is that didn't quite get the lesson so I can spend more time going over it with you to make sure you master it. So we need to change our whole way that we
oh,
teach
absolutely.
so
And
that
that can be done if there's smaller classrooms.
But but
well,
also,
Throwing
but
that
there
in.
are also, teachers who just reach out. When Sarah was, I want to say this was her third grade teacher, and she was having trouble in math, and the teacher would stay after school with the ones
yeah,
who were
I
teaching,
did
and
that.
I offered, I says, please, this is your time now, can I pay you as a tutor? And
Mhm.
she said, her name is Helen Schoen, she was a magnificent teacher, and she said, no, she says, because it is the teacher's job to make sure that the students get the lesson.
Now that's the kind of attitude teachers have to have. I know it's not easy, especially if you got 30
That's a good
students.
teacher.
But I used to do that,
Yeah.
like when I was a teacher or teaching assistant and everything.
Yeah.
And there was one student, it was fourth grade, and he was absent a lot. I'm not sure what was happening, maybe family issues or whatever, but he was absent a lot. And he would cut up a lot. So, when you're disrupted, then they put you out the classroom. So you miss even more class.
Yeah.
And so we were doing math and he couldn't get it. And so I had him stay after school, because once again, he had gotten put out for, misbehaving.
Misbehaving.
But then he confessed to me, he said, well, I don't understand division, because I was absent when they went over that. So we went over division, and then I realized he said, I don't understand multiplication because I was absent when we did that. I said, well, of course you can't understand division until you get multiplication. So we went over it. I think we was like 2 hours after school, but I stayed there and we went over, and it was like, oh, and he got it.
Yes.
And I understood that he was misbehaving, so he would get put out of the class, so he wouldn't be embarrassed for not knowing. So
Yes.
one problem just compounds and becomes exponential, and keeping a child behind. So rather than punishing children when they act up, we should even find out what it is. Why are they acting?
Why?
Sometimes
Yeah.
kids are trying to cover not knowing something, or fear of, they don't want to read out loud because they know they're going to stumble and be laughed at. So that's why we got to teach. What I've noticed about teachers, you're gonna use the same model of teaching that you use in parenting, because it's really the same job. It's just, different thing you have to
It's
do.
more,
More
it's more
children.
kids
And more children.
in a very long day,
Yeah.
and
But
you have to deal with a whole lot of
different
things going on.
personalities.
Several different
Yeah.
personalities.
But if you're a patient parent, you're going to be a patient teacher. If you're an impatient parent, it's screaming, hollering, and using humiliation to keep people afraid of you, so that you can keep control of the class. That's I mean, if that's what you do as a parent, that's what you're going to do as a teacher, because that's the only way you know how to maintain control. And then the administration will talk about you real bad if you don't have classroom management, so you end up forced to be mean.
Yes, yes.
But even teachers need other skills, like you were saying, Barbara, about using praise when they do something right.
Yes.
That goes a long way toward children wanting that praise, so they choose to behave so they can get the praise, as opposed to acting out so they can get attention, or acting out so they can get put out the classroom so they won't be embarrassed because they don't know the lesson. So we got to be able to reach,
or just learning how to be sneaky, because
Yeah.
if your kids are afraid of you, they're
Right.
and they
You're
know that they've
dishonest.
got, maybe there's underage drinking. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? If they're in a place and they're 15, 16, 17 years old and they're drunk, and they know that if they call you, they are going to be in a world of hurt, they may get into a car with someone who also don't need to be behind the wheel. What you do is that by the time they get to that point, you say, I don't care. If you have done something, if you are drunk, if you are high, if
Call
you
me
are
to come get
if
you.
you are in any kind of unsafe situation, I am the call that you make.
Right.
Don't
Call
call
me.
any of your little friends,
Yep.
because it is more important for me, because you are the center of my universe. And it is more important for me that you get home safe. We will deal with consequences later.
Right.
Maybe you'll
Right.
be grounded.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's your last party
yeah.
for the year.
Yeah, maybe you won't be able to party until you're 30.
But at
But
least you'll be alive.
whatever it is, I'm your first call.
Yeah.
I am your sanctuary. I am your lifeline. You may be afraid of hurting my feelings or making me mad or whatever, but don't be afraid to come to me when you need help.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is the lesson. And all of us, we have to have as our objective, our child gets safely to adulthood. And the way we do that is to make sure they can trust us, so that when they are in trouble, rather than them making a further bad decision, like getting in the car with somebody else who's drunk and then everybody dies in a crash, they need to be able to call and say, look, I had too much to drink. Yeah, I know I'm just 15. I shouldn't have been drinking, but this person that's driving, they're drunk too. Can you come get me? And we not saying, I ain't coming to get you, or I'm beating your butt when I get home. No, we're not doing that. We're going to love
A
them.
little old, be throwing out the butt beating threat.
Right. Yeah. After a while, that doesn't work. But whatever it is, we have to love them enough to let them trust us.
Yeah.
So we've got to go. And we want you all to subscribe to our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Three Black Moms, and watch us every Sunday, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. So until next week, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl. Follow Raquel Martin, PhD, on Instagram. She's brilliant.
And I'm Barbara. Be a good parent. Hey, check out this book. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.